Hey everyone, welcome back to our shared space of reflection and discovery. Today, we are going to walk together into the heart of a mystery that defies the cynicism of the modern world. A mystery that asks a profound question of every single one of us. Is God merely a distant architect, watching us from the far reaches of the cosmos? Or is he so intimately in love with his creation that he can physically rest in the arms of a human being? We are journeying back to the cold, stone corridors of San Giovanni Rotondo, to a specific Christmas Eve where the veil between heaven and earth didn't just thin, it tore completely open. We are exploring the night when Padre Pio, a man of immense suffering and immense love, was seen holding the living Christ child. This is not just a story about a vision. It is a testament to the reality of the Incarnation. It is a narrative that challenges us to look at how we perceive the divine presence in our own lives. Through this story, and the teachings that surround it, we will uncover what it truly means to have a heart pure enough to become a cradle for the Creator. Let us open our minds and hearts to the possibility that God is closer than we dare to imagine, waiting to be held not just in history, but in the silence of our own souls. To understand the magnitude of this event, we must first immerse ourselves in the atmosphere of the monastery during the holy season of Advent. For Padre Pio, the weeks leading up to Christmas were not simply a time of liturgical observance. They were a period of intense, almost agonizing spiritual anticipation. Witnesses and fellow friars often remarked that as December approached, a visible transformation would come over him. The man who bore the wounds of the crucifixion began to glow with a different kind of fire. If Lent was his time of sharing in the Passion, Advent was his time of sharing in the holy madness of God's love, the madness that would compel the infinite to become an infant. He spoke of the divine babe with such tenderness that tears would often stream down his face just at the mention of Bethlehem. The cold winds of the Gargano Mountains would howl outside the friary walls, but inside, in the cell of this humble Capuchin, a spiritual heat was building. It was in this context, on a silent Christmas Eve in 1922, that the ordinary rules of nature were suspended. The monastery was quiet. The other friars had retired to prepare for the midnight mass or to rest, but the air was thick with a presence that one young friar was about to stumble upon by accident, changing his life forever. The story comes to us primarily through the testimony of a fellow brother, often identified in the chronicles as Father Renard, though some accounts attribute it to other close confidants who guarded the secret for years. This friar was walking down the long, shadowed corridor of the sleeping quarters. It was late, and a heavy silence hung over the stone floors, the kind of silence that feels pregnant with meaning. As he passed the door of Padre Pio's cell, he intended perhaps to ask a question, or simply to check on the Padre, knowing that Pio often spent the night in prayer rather than sleep. But before he could even knock, he was stopped dead in his tracks. The door was slightly ajar, or perhaps the light was so intense it seeped through the cracks and keyhole, flooding the dark hallway with an unnatural brilliance. This was not the flickering, yellow glow of an oil lamp or a candle, nor was it the harshness of electric light. It was described as a blinding white radiance, a tabor light that seemed to have no earthly source. Overcome by a mixture of holy fear and overwhelming curiosity, the friar stepped closer. He peered into the room, and what he saw caused his breath to catch in his throat, freezing him in a moment of pure awe. There, standing in the center of the room, was Padre Pio, but he was not kneeling at his prie-dieu in his usual posture of agonizing intercession. He was standing, his face transfigured with an expression of ecstatic joy that the witnessing friar had never seen before. In his arms, Padre Pio was holding a baby, but this was no ordinary child, and it certainly wasn't a statue. The witness recounted that the child was alive. The infant was glowing with the same celestial light that filled the room, a light that seemed to emanate from the child's very skin, illuminating Padre Pio's bearded face with a golden hue. The baby was incredibly beautiful, possessing a majesty that commanded reverence despite his smallness. The witness saw the child's hands moving, saw him caressing Padre Pio's face, and saw Padre Pio looking down at this infant with a love so profound, so consuming, that it seemed to dissolve the very boundaries of his individuality. It was a portrait of total intimacy, the Creator resting in the creature, the shepherd becoming the lamb, held by one of his own flock. The young friar, terrified by the sheer holiness of the scene, fell to his knees in the hallway, realizing he was trespassing on ground more sacred than the Holy of Holies. The vision lasted for a time that felt like eternity, but was likely only a few moments. Then, inevitably, the supernatural manifestation began to fade. Or rather, Padre Pio became aware of a presence in the hallway, as the light dimmed and the vision ceased, leaving the friar wondering if the child had vanished or merged into the Padre's heart. Padre Pio rushed to the door. He found the young brother trembling in the corridor. We can imagine the scene. The great mystic, still flushed with the heat of heaven, confronting the bewildered witness. Padre Pio didn't scold him with anger, but with an intense, pleading authority. He grabbed the friar by the shoulders and extracted a solemn promise. "You must not say a word of this to anyone, not while I am alive." The saint knew that the world wasn't ready for such revelations, and his humility could not bear the thought of drawing attention to himself. He wanted the world to look at Jesus, not at the man holding him. The friar kept this secret for years, only speaking of it after Padre Pio had passed into eternity, adding his voice to the chorus of testimonies that reveal the true stature of this humble priest. But why did this happen? Why was Padre Pio granted such a tangible, physical encounter with the Christ child? To understand this, we must dive deeper into Padre Pio's theology of the Incarnation. For him, Jesus was not an abstract concept or a historical figure trapped in the pages of the Gospels. Jesus was a living, breathing reality, a contemporary of the soul. Padre Pio taught that the Incarnation was the supreme act of humility. He often meditated on the fact that God, who holds the universe in the span of his hand, chose to make himself needy, dependent, and small. By appearing as a child, Christ disarms our fear. We might be terrified of a judge or a king, but who can be afraid of a baby? Padre Pio understood that to hold the Christ child, one must become a spiritual child oneself. He had emptied himself so completely of pride, ego, and worldly ambition that a space was created within him, a spiritual manger, where Christ could manifest. This miracle teaches us that God delights in coming to those who are humble of heart. It suggests that the holding of God is not reserved for the great and powerful, but for the little ones who trust in him with the simplicity of a child. This deep connection to the infant Jesus is further illuminated by the letters Padre Pio wrote to his spiritual directors and spiritual daughters. In these correspondences, we see the inner landscape of his soul during the Christmas season. He would write of a fire consuming his chest, a sweetness so piercing it felt like a wound. In one letter he wrote, "I feel a great desire to live always in the house of the heavenly babe." He spoke of the night of Christmas as a time when divine love is born. He urged his spiritual children to approach the crib not just with their eyes, but with their hearts. "Keep close to the crib of this most beautiful child," he would advise, "and do not leave until you have learned how to love." For Padre Pio, the wood of the manger and the wood of the cross were made of the same timber. He saw the shadow of the cross falling over the crib, realizing that this child was born specifically to die for us. This duality, the joy of the birth and the sorrow of the destiny, created a complex, bittersweet love in Padre Pio's heart, a love that made him a perfect vessel for the Lord to visit. We must also talk about the bambinello, the statue of the baby Jesus that Padre Pio kept in his cell. This was not just a piece of plaster or wood to him. It was a focal point of his devotion, a sacramental that helped bridge the gap between the visible and the invisible. The statue, carved by an artisan to Padre Pio's specifications, depicted the infant Jesus with a hand raised in blessing. Every Christmas Eve, before the midnight Mass, Padre Pio would carry this statue in a solemn procession through the friary and into the church. Witnesses describe how he would clutch the image to his chest, his face radiant, often wet with tears. It was said that during these processions, the statue seemed to take on a life of its own in his arms, or rather, that Padre Pio's love was so intense it animated the image. There were times when the other friars looked at him carrying the bambinello and felt they were no longer looking at a statue, but were seeing a reenactment of the miracle the young friar had witnessed in the corridor. The way he kissed the feet of the image, the way he cradled it. It was the tenderness of a mother and the reverence of a high priest combined. This tangible connection to the infant Jesus culminated every year in the celebration of the Midnight Mass. If you have ever seen footage or photos of Padre Pio celebrating Mass, you know it was never a quick affair. It was a marathon of prayer, a mystical ascent up the mountain of Calvary. But the Christmas Mass had a unique flavor. The liturgy recounts the moment the Word became flesh, and for Padre Pio, this wasn't a metaphor. When he intoned the Gloria in excelsis Deo, his voice would tremble with the weight of the angelic chorus he seemed to hear echoing in his own ears. During the reading of the Gospel, when the birth of Christ was announced, Padre Pio would often pause, overcome by emotion, unable to speak for minutes at a time. The congregation, packed into the small church, would wait in silence, feeling the electricity of the moment. They weren't just attending a ritual, they were witnessing a man interacting with the divine in real time. He showed us that the liturgy is a window into the eternal now, where Christ is always being born, always offering himself, always present. It is impossible to reflect on Padre Pio and the Christ child without drawing the connection to his spiritual father, Saint Francis of Assisi. Saint Francis is credited with creating the first nativity scene at Greccio in 1223 because he wanted to see with his own eyes the poverty and humility of the Lord. Francis wanted to make the abstract concrete. Padre Pio, a true son of Saint Francis, inherited this burning desire. Just as Francis bore the stigmata, so did Pio. Just as Francis saw the hay and the ox and the ass as a palace for the king, so did Pio. This specific miracle of holding the child is a continuation of the Franciscan charism, the spirituality of the Incarnation. It reminds us that our faith is not a philosophy of the mind, but a religion of the body and the heart. God took on flesh so that we could touch him. He became visible so we could love him. Padre Pio's experience is a reminder that the Franciscan way is one of deep, emotional, and physical engagement with the humanity of Christ. Let us consider for a moment the secret aspect of this miracle. Why did Padre Pio demand silence? Why are so many of the greatest graces kept hidden? In our modern world, we are obsessed with broadcasting every moment of our lives. We seek validation through visibility. But the saints teach us a different way. They teach us the discipline of the secret. Padre Pio knew that true spiritual intimacy requires a protective veil. Just as Mary pondered all these things in her heart, Padre Pio guarded the king's secrets. He understood that premature exposure can cheapen a mystery, turning a holy encounter into a spectacle. This teaches us a vital lesson for our own spiritual lives. We need to cultivate a private, secret garden in our souls where we meet with God, a place that is not for public consumption, a place of silence where the relationship can deepen without the interference of the world's opinions. The miracle was eventually revealed for our edification. but only after it had matured in the silence of the saint's heart. This event also serves as a profound counter-narrative to the way we often view the miraculous. Skeptics might dismiss such stories as hallucinations or pious legends, but when we look at the life of Padre Pio, a man examined by dozens of doctors, a man who lived under the microscope of the Church, a man of profound sanity and practical wisdom, we cannot easily dismiss his experiences. The man who built a massive hospital, the home for the relief of suffering, was not a dreamer lost in fantasy. He was a mystic grounded in reality. This grounding makes the supernatural elements of his life even more compelling. If a man so practical and so acquainted with suffering tells us, or shows us, that Christ is alive and tangible, we must pay attention. It suggests that the spiritual world is the more real world, and that our physical reality is just a thin skin stretched over the glowing truth of God's presence. The miracle is not that the laws of physics were bent, but that the true nature of the universe, which is Christ-centered, was revealed. Now, we must ask ourselves, how does this apply to us? We are not mystics living in a friary in Italy. We may never see a blinding light or hold the physical body of the infant Jesus, but Padre Pio insisted that we can all hold him. How? Through the Holy Eucharist and through charity. He taught that when we receive communion, we are holding God just as surely as he did that Christmas Eve. The physical appearance is different, bread instead of a child, but the substance is the same. Furthermore, Padre Pio often quoted the Gospel, "Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, you do to me." When we care for the sick, the poor, the lonely, or the difficult people in our lives with genuine love, we are holding the infant Jesus. We are cradling the vulnerability of God hidden in our neighbor. The lesson of the vision is that Christ wishes to be held by you. He wishes to rest in the arms of your soul. But to do this, our arms must not be full of other things, full of our worries, our greed, our resentments, or our distractions. We must empty our arms to fill them with him. Padre Pio's vision also challenges us to recover the wonder of Christmas. It is so easy for the season to become a routine of commerce and stress. We put up the decorations, we buy the gifts, we attend the parties. But do we stop to be blinded by the light? Do we pause in the corridor of our busy lives to peek into the stable? Padre Pio's experience invites us to slow down. It invites us to sit in silence before the nativity scene in our own homes and really look at it. To look until the plaster figures fade away and the reality of the event crashes in on us. God is here. God is with us. The infinite became an infant. If we can recapture even a fraction of Padre Pio's awe, our faith will cease to be a duty and become a romance. We will begin to understand that we are not seeking a God who is hiding. We are being sought by a God who made himself small enough to be found. As we move toward the conclusion of this narrative, we must reflect on the hope that this story offers to those who are grieving. Padre Pio is often the patron saint of the suffering and the bereaved. Many people come to him when they have lost a child or a loved one. This story of him holding the Christ child speaks a powerful word to those empty arms. It tells us that life is stronger than death. It tells us that the spiritual world is teeming with life. Padre Pio, who lived with one foot in heaven, showed us that our loved ones are not gone. They have just stepped into the next room, into that corridor of light. The same Jesus who appeared to him is the Jesus who holds our departed loved ones. By drawing close to Jesus, we draw close to them. The communion of saints is real. The veil is thin. And in the Eucharist, we are all united, the living, the dead, and the divine, in one embrace. Let us return to that dark hallway in San Giovanni Rotondo one last time. Imagine the young friar on his knees, the smell of incense and winter air. the silence returning after the light has faded. He stands up, shaken but changed. He has seen the secret of the universe, that at the heart of all things is a love that longs to be held. Padre Pio, back in his cell, is now alone again with his Lord. The physical manifestation gone, but the spiritual presence eternal. He resumes his prayer, offering his life, his sufferings, and his heart to the babe of Bethlehem. He knows, and now we know, that we are never truly alone. So, as you go about your week, I encourage you to carry this image in your heart. Picture the strong, wounded hands of Padre Pio, cradling the glowing Christ child. Let it remind you of the tenderness of God. Let it remind you that no matter how dark the world gets, the light of Christ is real and it is powerful. Let it challenge you to prepare a place in your own heart where He can rest. Maybe tonight, in the quiet of your own room, you can ask Padre Pio to intercede for you, to help you love Jesus with the simplicity and fire that He did. Maybe you can whisper a prayer into the silence. Lord, I may not see you with my eyes, but I hold you with my faith. Rest in my heart tonight. Thank you for walking this journey with us today. These stories are not just history. They are invitations. They are doorways into a deeper life. If this story touched something in your soul, if it gave you a moment of peace or a spark of hope, then it has done its work. Let us remain united in prayer. Let us stay close to the saints, and let us never lose the wonder of being loved by a God who became a child for us. Until next time, may you feel the warmth of that divine light in your own life. God bless you all.